Hello and welcome to the Elementary Ceramics Toolkit. I'm Professor Maggie Horvath.
And I'm art teacher Allie Aiken.
And welcome. I teach ceramics at Campbell University. It's in North Carolina and I have about 5 years of ceramics teaching experience.
Very cool. I teach elementary school art just west of Philadelphia. I'm K through 5 and I've been doing it for 10 years now.
Today, we'd like you to walk through our children's book that we're working on getting published about ceramics that you can use in and out of the classroom. And we'll talk to you about some of our favorite ceramics things.
Okay, I'm going to load up the book. And I'll screen share it with you. All right, I'm going to read this to you totally second grade style, so be prepared. All right. Bug in a Mug, written and illustrated by Alexandra Aiken and Maggie Horvath. Here's our ceramics toolkit. So this will be more, you'll see what this is about later in our conversation, but it's a lot of information if you follow this QR code. Bug in a Mug. It's going to say that on our presentation. Okay, here we go. Hi, I'm Dawn. This is often how I wake up. I guess sleeping in carriers of caffeine before it has a chance to wake people up has its risks. But let me tell you, it does have its benefits. So these little creatures are made out of polymer clay, and then we use ceramics from potters, Maggie being one of them, and other local and widespread potters that we really enjoy. My family has had a love of ceramics for generations. Did you know that clay can come right from the edge of a river or stream? Well, that's where my sweet grandpa found himself a moment before he became part of a great big shovel full of mushy, sticky clay. And here's Grandpa Duke and Grandma Dot. From then on, clay was ingrained in our family. Here's our cute little family tree. Sleeping in mugs is just the beginning. For most of my family, ceramics is our day job too. So this is the part where you can go as in depth with the book as you want to. If you're learning, teaching about something specific, like jobs that have to do with ceramics, maybe this is a page you'll focus on. So if we're going in deep, we say Uncle Declan is a marine archaeologist. Here he is discovering amphora at a Roman shipwreck. Aunt Donna is a historian. She's studying cuneiform tablets at the museum. Dave is a national park ranger. He gives tours of adobe buildings. So you can focus on different points. There are hundreds of jobs where people get to work with ceramics every day. So here's some more, and you can read in if you want. There's little examples and pictures to focus in on. So if you're talking about how mugs are made on a line and how typically we buy mugs at somewhere like a grocery store or something like that, you could talk about Aunt Doris working on a mug assembly line. Ceramics is our passion. A lot of my family makes art. Uncle Drake making a coil pot while Aunt Darcy rolls a slab, Uncle Don showing his work in a gallery, and Darren helping Daisy with throwing on the potter's wheel. There are tons of ways that artists work with clay. That's why there's such variety in the pottery that we make. Depending on an artist's interest and materials, they can use clay in lots of different ways. Dominique is a ceramics constructor, Devin adding wood to a salt firing kiln, and Damien mixing glaze in the lab. Every lover of ceramics has their favorite pieces. Here's Grandma Dot's. It's a mug by Leanne Thompson. So this is where Maggie and I threw in some really cool potters that's work we enjoy. And also that shows a range and variety of pottery and styles. Desmond's always using this salt-fired mug he got at a kiln opening at Curry Wilkins Pottery. Grandpa Duke's favorite is a Kiranuki mug he got on a trip to Japan. And Dave's favorite pottery is Pueblo blackware from New Mexico. We like all kinds of pottery made by lots of different artists throughout time. Here's Don holding a Korean moon jar, and Dominique and a jar from ancient Crete. Damien's favorite is this mug he got at an art show. Amanda Dobratz made it. And around the world. There are lots of ways to find a favorite piece of ceramics at art sales and galleries, shows on display in museums, or in a friend or family member's collection. Ceramics artworks are all around. Aunt Donna and a contemporary Zulu coil pot, Dominique in a mug by her favorite artist, Shauna Pincus, and Dylan at Moravian Tile Works in Doylestown, Pennsylvania. I love that my family loves ceramics. Fresh by the riverside to fired in the kiln, I love ceramics every step of the way. And here are some of our ceramics terminology that we use throughout the book, and also ceramics vocab. We got permission from our feature artists to use their artwork in our book, and here's a short profile from each of them. And here's our profiles.
All right, next we're going to talk you through the ceramics toolkit. And we're going to start with a couple of our favorite tools. So this first one is the angle cutting clay tool. You can buy these or you can 3D print them, which is really awesome. If you scan that QR code, it'll take you to the thing number on Thingiverse to 3D print them if you're interested. These do 30, 60, or 90-degree angles, and you'll see how we use them later on in the lesson ideas. The second one is the craft foam sheets. I use these to protect the tables, they keep down dust, and they allow your students to walk around with the clay.
Really cool way to keep slice sleep. Oh, you also said it was a good way to stack slabs.
Yes, so for your prep, if you need to stack anything, nothing sticks to them and they're really easy to wash.
I really love the Amico adjustable clay slicer. If you don't have one of these in your elementary school classroom, you totally should. It's this fastest way and most efficient way I've found to distribute pieces of clay that are all the same size.
Bisque Fix is a great way to reattach bone dry or bisqueware that has broken or to fill little cracks. There's 3 different options there depending on your supplier. They come in different colors as well, so depending on your clay body, but this is a great way to fix wares before they've been glaze fired. The next thing there is the Kemper wire brush. This is a really nice way to score. It's good for getting to hard to reach areas, and it's much smaller than a fork or a serrated metal rib. Also much more maneuverable for little hands and less stabby. So I highly recommend this one.
We need less stabby.
Yes. The second one is the Mud Tool Shredder. It works like any other rasp. So it'll take off lots of clay at a leather hard or hard leather hard state, but works fantastic in the elementary classroom, especially with pieces with uneven bottoms. This is a teacher tool, not a student tool, so you'll be using this one, but it will greatly reduce the time that you're spending on making things sit nicely on the table.
And also less risky for things to fall on the ground.
Next, we'll talk about underglazes. Underglazes are a great way to get color onto clay. They go on just like acrylic paint, so the color that they are in the bottle is the color that they'll turn out. These come in class packs, so you just have to order one set. These are also great because they go on just like acrylic paint out of the bottle. You can water them down and they'll go on like watercolor, or you can let them dry out a little bit and you can use them like ink for stamping. On the right-hand side of the page, we have 2 options for clear. The LG10 is a low fire clear, and then the C11 is a high fire clear. These go from cone 04 to 10, so wherever you're firing your kiln, underglazes are great.
Underglazes are also mixable, right?
Yes, fully mixable, just like paint.
Very cool. These Amico Crystal Tex glazes are really just beautiful. My kids find them amazing in elementary school art. It just adds an extra pop and an extra excitement to their clay projects.
The Amico LG series glazes are low fire. They craze and break over textures. So these look amazing because you'll get dark and light areas, which will really highlight and set off your textures.
Yeah, if texture is a goal for your project, that's definitely a good way to go.
Next, we just have 3 suppliers that I like to use. Blick is probably someone that most of you have POs set up with already. This is where I usually order a lot of my tools and clay from. Easy to access, easy to set up POs with. However, I really love the ceramic shop. They are clay experts. They're located in Norristown, Pennsylvania. If you're local to them, you can go and pick up in the store, and that way you don't have to pay shipping. Otherwise, if you live in a cold climate, the ceramic shop will ship when weather ready so that your glazes and clay doesn't freeze in transit, and they will not charge you for a heated transport. So the ceramic shop is great to work with. Also, they offer advice on kilns and fixing things, and they're great to talk to with any questions. They're also easy to set POs up with. And the third one is Sheffield Pottery. They do a great job filling the gaps on things that you might need from Blick or the ceramic shop that are out of stock. They're also great to talk with. They are located in the Northeast. So if you live up there, they also offer discounted shipping to local areas. Let's talk about some familiar problems that we've all seen in our kilns. The first pictures are 3 things that all of us have done or experienced. The first one that you see there, what has happened is probably too much moisture in the clay. So if your clay goes in a little bit damp on the inside, what happens is that water expands and it causes cracks and just explosions. If you ever pick up a piece and the whole bottom falls out, or it's like shredded into tiny minuscule particles, usually that's a moisture problem. Now, if it's split into 2 even halves, that might be an air bubble or air pocket problem. So that pig whose whole head fell off probably had an air bubble in that head. Poor guy. The next thing is a glazing issue. If there's too much glaze on a piece, it can seal itself right to your kiln shell. Or if pieces fall over or touch in the kiln, they'll glaze together.
And they get really sharp.
Sharp. What I recommend to do to avoid that is to put them up on stilts or on biscuits. The picture on the left is telling that your clay is all the way dry. So how do we make sure it's dry? If it's wet, it will still feel cold. So some people recommend holding the piece up to your cheek or making sure that it's not wet in its thickest areas by just touching it or feeling it. If it feels cold, it's not ready to be fired. The other thing to remember before you put things in your kiln is to make sure that your kiln furniture, so your stilts and your shelves, are good for the same firing temperature as your clay, and to make sure that your clay is good for the temperature that you're firing to. So the top picture is shelves that melted and the bottom picture is clay that melted. So make sure everything is working together.
Oh, the poor teapots. I would cry. I would cry.
The next thing that we have there is preheating. So if you have pieces that are a little thick or a tiny bit wet, or you're just not sure if they're all the way dry, set your kiln up to preheat. All the normal kilns have a preheat setting. What that does is it takes the temperature up to 200 degrees at about 15 degrees an hour, and then it'll sit there for as long as you ask it to. Usually I do half an hour to an hour and 15 minutes, and then my pieces are all the way dry. After it finishes the preheat setting, it'll just go to your regular kiln ramping. So you don't have to, it's a set it and forget it. Set it to preheat, let it heat up to that 200 degrees, let all the water evaporate, and then it'll go on its way for the rest of the firing. Clay and kiln safety. So your clay dust is harmful. Try to avoid dust wherever possible. Don't sweep. Wipe everything down with something wet. Use those foam mats so that you don't get clay on your tables. That way you don't have to clean off your tables. If you have a kiln explosion, make sure that you get all those little chunks out, vacuum those out. They can cause problems in your elements. The exterior of your kiln is hot. Make sure that you have everything at least 2 to 3 feet away from the kiln. Don't lean on a hot kiln. Don't put anything on top of your hot kiln. If your kiln is with the kids, I recommend putting up some kind of caution barrier to keep them away from it.
The next topic is more about lessons. We were talking about lesson length, and one day seems to be the best place to be for a clay lesson, especially for little ones. Storage is tricky, and if you can get things done one day, it's the easiest way to go. Wet clay should last for about a day, but if you're leaving it out, you have to take extra precautions to keep things usable for the next class. Glazing can also be a one-day project. As far as my experience, we're about a 40-minute class, and it lines up pretty much perfectly.
As far as storage goes, you want to keep your wet clay wet. So any clay that's still fresh out of the bag, when you're done with it, go ahead and close that bag up nice and tight, and it should stay fresh for about another month. If you want to keep it extra fresh, go ahead and put it in a tote. If your clay arrives frozen or gets frozen at some point, you're going to need to wedge that really, really well to get it usable again. But if your clay is fresh out of the bag and has never been frozen, it is good to use right out of that bag. As far as student artworks go,
Storage for a student artwork, you can use things like a Ziploc bag to keep things safe if they're not too crushable. I would recommend, if it's going to be there for more than a day or two, to add a squirt of water every now and then if you notice things starting to get brittle, or even putting a wet paper towel in along with the project. I don't like to have them touch the project because it can kind of break down edges if things get too moist. You can also use a tote to keep things safe. And again, a wet sponge in the corner is probably a great idea to keep a little extra moisture in the box. We have some lesson ideas for you. Go ahead.
So for kindergarten to second grade, the most important thing that they know when using clay is how to get two pieces to stick together. So that's what this project is all about. Just scratch and attach a soft slab. You can just use a rectangular template for this. So have them cut out a rectangle, roll it into a circle, put the two ends together to form that seam, and then put the bottom on. They'll learn things like slab rolling, using a template, cutting, scoring, slipping, smoothing, and glazing all in this one project.
If your clay isn't too moist, it's even easy to have it stand on end like this. It's the shorter, the better, it seems sometimes, for that grade level, for something like this.
The next project builds directly on the first. So you're building your cylinder exactly the same way. This time, go ahead and use that angle cutter to put the two angles together. And then add texture. You can go around the classroom and find textures. You can have kids bring textures in from home or find their own, or you can join up with your tech teacher to make some 3D printed textures. The next is taking the whole thing one step further. You can use a variety of templates on this as opposed to just the straight cylinder. I really highly recommend using those coffee cozies from Starbucks. They make a great cone. And then you can either assign artists, have students pick their own artists, choose artists that you've already covered or are working on, and have students embellish these pots, add some sculptural elements, add some more slabs or some coils to the outside, really talk about scoring and slipping to get things to get really well attached. And then they can make kind of customized artist mugs.
An idea for a sculptural lesson for first through third grade is a little pinch pot bird. These little guys are really cute and they're easy to make. I start them with a pinch pot, have the students put a piece of newspaper inside, crumbled up in a ball to keep an air pocket inside, and scratch and attach the top, and then start sculpturally turning it into a bird. For the bigger kids, I have them flatten a slab and cut out wings and scratch and attach them. It's a really cool way to mix together some skills they know, making a pinch pot and also the scratch and attach skills.
These are lots of fun to glaze too.
They are fun, yeah.
Next, to talk about relief carving and local landscapes. National standards include constructed environments. So talk to your students about landscapes with human constructions in them, and then have them integrate that into their relief carving. These are nice because you just start with a thick slab. Students can directly transfer a drawing onto the clay by just drawing it on paper and then just pushing through it with a dull pencil to get those lines transferred onto the clay, and then they can start carving it out.
Okay, I talk about the other way to transfer?
Mm-hmm.
Another way to transfer is to have them do the drawing and then go over it with a marker, a water soluble marker. So Mr. Sketch's thin work really well. And then you can just have them lightly spritz the clay, very, very lightly, and they flip their picture, give it a little back rub, and it'll transfer right onto the clay.
Yeah, the marker will go right onto the clay, which is really great. This is also a great opportunity to talk about foreground, middle ground, and background, along with the depth of carving. So the least that you carve is your foreground, the middle carving is the middle ground, and the most carved is your background, which is a great way to show that in 3 dimensions. The last project that we'll talk about, and this is for your older students, so 5th grade, is carved cups. In Japanese, these are called kurinuki unomi. This gives you a great opportunity to talk about how ceramics happens all around the world and allows students to try a different kind of art making. Kurinuki is just carved mugs or cups or teacups. These are handheld size, so small scale. Basically, you decide what your outside shape is and you do the outside. And then once that starts to harden up a little bit while you're working on it, then you do the inside. So this can be a 1-day or 2-day process, but it's all carved, which is really fun for the students.
All right. Thank you so much for listening to us today. If you'd like to know when our book is released, you can email us. We hope in the next couple months. We're really excited about it. This is, again, a link to the ceramics toolkit. It goes more in depth about all the things we just talked about above, and it also has a copy of the book.
Yep. Enjoy.
Thank you.